Welcome to the Sooners 360 Recruiting Podcast, a podcast for OU recruiting fans by Sooners 360. Each week we catch you up on the latest in OU recruiting news and provide opinions and evaluations on all things OU football recruiting. I'm Chris Mason, lead recruiting analyst for Sooners 360. This podcast is now sponsored by Sooners 360 on Patreon. To support this podcast, please go to patreon.com/Sooners 360817 and click subscribe. It's only $2 a month. There's also a free trial option, and that's where I'm posting all of my football program and recruiting content on a written basis. The link will also be in the show notes. Also, this podcast is now part of the Believe podcast family. Every team, every topic, everywhere. Also, I'm appearing every week on the Horns Down podcast on YouTube. You can just search for Horns Down in YouTube and find me there talking about it with Chris and Jason from the Hall of Fame podcast as well. So also please like and subscribe to that YouTube channel if you want to hear my thoughts. We do a game breakdown pretty much a couple hours after the game's finished. So I'm recording this late Friday night, so I'm trying to give you guys a recruiting podcast that you can listen to on your way into Norman for the adjusted 11 a.m. kickoff due to the severe weather expected in the state of Oklahoma later that day. Both the OU and OSU games have moved, so it looks like it's going to be a pretty considerable storm. So good luck to everybody. Safe travels to the game and safe travels back to your destination in Oklahoma, Texas, or wherever you're heading. So let's get to it. This is episode 108, Maine visitors for Maine game. So we're going to jump to the recruiting news. As always, we start with 2025. I feel like I should just record this once and keep repeating it. So far, there are no new offers at defensive end or defensive tackle. We will talk about a defensive tackle visiting for the Maine game in a minute. There are no new offers at offensive line with Andrew Babalola having committed to Michigan. No new offers at tight end. And that's not really changed much. But, you continue to hope you might add some tight end depth and some competition at tight end. And no new offers at linebacker, which is a little strange since OU still only has the one verbal commitment at linebacker. So at linebacker, we're still waiting to see if Caleb Burns, the linebacker we've talked about for a little while from the Houston area, Baylor commit, if he will go ahead and visits for Bama. Oregon looks like the main competition to Baylor. Obviously, Baylor seems to be recovering their season a little bit. They just had a blowout win last week, and maybe Jake Spavital, as their offensive coordinator, is getting their offense going a little bit, running game going. So whereas Dave Aranda looked like a dead man walking 4 weeks ago, right now, I think there's a chance he might save his job, and that might make the Burns commitment flip a little more difficult. OU also appears to be trying to flip Luke Metz, the Georgia linebacker, who is currently committed to Alabama. Alabama's lost some commits, added some commits, so has Georgia. So things are a little volatile with both the Georgia and Alabama classes right now, a little bit. Austin Pay, the big offensive lineman who visited for South Carolina. He's from Utah. He's the player who's going to take his Mormon mission before he goes to college, plays college football. He's announcing tomorrow afternoon. I would be shocked if this is not a decision for BYU. I kind of mentioned that over the last couple of weeks when he was visiting, that this whole mission scenario is not something I've ever seen OU handle. BYU obviously has much more experience in doing that. So I'd imagine Austin Pay is going to announce for the Cougars, who are having a great season. So, and he's got family connections at BYU. So all of that just kind of adds up and makes sense a little bit. So with that, that would be still leaving OU needing another offensive lineman in this class, in my opinion. So, not sure what's going to go on with that or where it's going to come from, but that's where we are. Tonight, amusingly enough, speaking about offensive line, Bill Beanbow and Brent Venables are at Fasusi's high school game. He's getting his All-American Jersey award tonight. Louisville's playing a big game against Denton Guyer. I believe they won. A couple of Denton Guyer guys, obviously, OU's tracking, Sperry, and the 2027 defensive end commit as well. Amusingly enough, maybe Brent and Bill can walk over and talk to Sarkisian, who apparently showed up in the game by helicopter. Obviously, Texas would love to flip Fasusi, add an elite 5-star offensive tackle to their recruiting class. Their class is obviously they're doing well in recruiting. They're adding a lot of names. They've got about 6 new names that they've added recently that they're kind of tracking. Some Southeast prospects is kind of interesting. Not that many in Texas. They're not making a late run at Lamont Rogers like A&M is. No one's so it's obviously they'd like to flip Fasusi, but we're getting closer and closer to signing day. So I think the Fasusi connection to Bill is going to be very interesting to track with OU needing a new offensive coordinator. Cortland Guillory visited Texas a couple of weeks ago for the UGA game. Texas obviously wants to flip him. He's having a huge senior year where he just looks like a playmaking superstar. So could play safety, could play cornerback. Just one of those elite-looking secondary guys who's playing wide receiver, quarterback, just kind of doing everything for his team. For now, I would say that doesn't seem like a flip that's going to happen. He seems pretty locked into OU. Seems pretty ready to be part of that class. And to the best of my knowledge, just like Fasusi, Cortland Guillory is enrolling early. Only players I'm not sure. I know 2 players probably not enrolling early are Grayson Harris. He wants to play baseball. And CJ Nixon wants to play basketball. Academically, some other guy, it seems like everybody else is trying to make it work. And, we'll just see how that fleshes out over the next 30 days, really. Next 30 to 45 days. So, despite the bad season, let's just call it what it is, a bad season. If you're on my Patreon site, you can see I made a free article if you follow me on Twitter from my Patreon site talking about a survey of confidence grade for OU fans and Brent, and it's obviously taken a big hit. I also talk about some of the things I want, I'm dying to see from OU moving forward with the new offensive coordinator, post Ole Miss, kind of some offensive things I'm looking at in terms of how they would impact recruiting and how they impact the team in general. How quickly could OU rebound? Right now, there does not appear to be anybody actively wavering. Doesn't mean they can't. Doesn't mean some players could choose to sign later and still enroll. It's going to be a little messy in December with the letter of intents going away. But financial aid paperwork, to the best of my knowledge, once you sign financial aid paperwork, no other schools can contact you. And the NCAA is only going to accept one submission of financial aid paperwork. So there won't be a letter of intent, but when guys sign their financial aid paperwork on that Wednesday, December 4th, that means it's illegal from NCAA rules for any schools to contact them, and no other financial aid paperwork will be accepted as legitimate. So we'll have to see how that shakes out, but that's my understanding on how they're getting rid of the letter of intent, but still allowing high school kids to sign and for programs to know that they are now not recruitable any longer. So this is going to be a short little video because, we've got some Maine visitors and there's not much going on with recruiting news. As I warned, the momentum OU had for 2025 is stalled. We haven't had a commitment since, I believe, Michael Fasusi. And since then, we've lost 2 defensive linemen and don't show any real signs of actively replacing them. 2026 momentum, I thought OU might have a handful of commits by now. Obviously, a lot of that momentum was at offensive line, at skill position, at wide receiver, DBs as well. But, OU's just not got a lot of momentum right now. So it's tough for them to really pick up some 26 kids. I will say that it's surprising OU hasn't got a little more drama going on with their recruits because there's a decommit tidal wave in recruiting elsewhere. Kids are jumping off left and right. Some directions make sense. Some are a little puzzling. But all in all, there is a lot of decommit action happening. Kids leaving big-time programs like UGA go to Michigan. Kids leaving Bama. Kids leaving Clemson. FSU continues to lose people. Probably going to lose 2 more kids this weekend. A program having even bigger problems than OU in recruiting. FSU and on the field, OU has no momentum. FSU has like negative 2,000 momentum right now. But the biggest story to watch, and it's not an OU story, it doesn't impact OU at all. There's no sign Kevin Sperry is wavering, no signs that OU is in any way, shape, or form interested in moving on from Kevin Sperry. But the biggest non-OU story, sorry to be clear there, seems to be that Michigan, who is, for a national champion, having a very bad year. And it's only going to get worse this weekend. I anticipate Oregon's going to knock them off, giving them 4 losses for the season, I believe. It's probably the most losses for a national champion in the second year, in the year right after the championship in probably a while. Since all the UGA, Bama, all the SEC champs in Ohio State, and it's probably, we have to go back to like the BCS era, maybe like Miami in 2002, maybe. I have to go back and check. But, Michigan's got 4 losses, has the Ohio State game coming. They're struggling. Their quarterback position is just a disaster. It's not even a position where you see where it's like young talent and maybe things can be figured out, which is maybe OU's problem, if you want to, from a generous perspective. I mean, Michigan's just got like no talent at quarterback. They just had their 7th-year player retire because of concussions. Orjai is a safety, fullback playing quarterback. He can't throw. And the other guy that they put in who started the season, he started the Texas game, he's been in and out of the starting lineup. He's not very good either. They did have a 5-star quarterback who they signed, Jaden Davis from Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm a little confused as to why he hasn't seen any playing time. I don't know if he enrolled late or enrolled early. I don't know if he's hurt. I don't follow Michigan football that much. But Michigan has a massive quarterback problem, and it just so happens that probably the number one quarterback ranked for 2025 is in the state of Michigan. He's a Michigan high school quarterback. His name's Bryce Underwood. He's been set to go to LSU for a while, and it appears Michigan, out of desperation or ignorance, has now decided to go all out and recruit him off from some massive NIL deal to try and flip him. They just lost a 4-star commit quarterback they had because of this pursuit. That guy basically seems to think that Michigan's going to get him, or is just annoyed that Michigan went the other direction. That kid's from Florida. He's already getting interest from some schools that have lost their quarterbacks. So there's really a trickle down, ping pong effect kind of going on right now. Clemson lost their Notre Dame lost their quarterback to Auburn. Notre Dame stole Clemson's quarterback, and now Clemson is trying to steal Michigan's quarterback because Michigan is trying to steal LSU's quarterback. Everybody got that? Uh, I'll try and come up with a flow chart for that next week if it gets any more confusing. But there's a lot of decommits going on, and quarterback decommits kind of flying around. So it's interesting that OU hasn't seen a bigger dent when industry wide it's decommit season and there's a lot of decommitments happening, and we haven't really even seen any coaching upheaval yet. Florida shows signs of maybe stabilizing a little bit. I think with Lanier, Napier probably saved his job. I think maybe we'll see. The last part of their schedule is very, very difficult. So we'll see what happens there. All right, let's move on to the Maine game and the Maine visitors. It's not a lot of visitors, but there are some key ones that I'd like to talk about. So the first one is a 2025 kid who I'll be honest, I only heard of him this week. He's posted on Twitter that he's visiting. All props to OU insider Parker Thune. I believe he was the first site to really mention him earlier in the week. It's Jenks defensive tackle Cash Jacobson. He's visiting. He received a USC offer this week. He's got some other really good offers. He's having a really good senior season. I watched his film. He's listed at 6'5", 285. He looks big. Now, those numbers look accurate. Doesn't have like elite burst, but I think he has a huge frame and he could easily be a nose guard, big nose guard for the Sooners at like 6'5", 310, 315, something like that. I think he's got some bad weight to lose. And then if you built him up, he could be a 6'5", 315 hammer at nose guard in the middle of the OU defense. I also think he also has some backup potential at offensive line. I think he's a defensive tackle initially, but if that wasn't quite clicking, I think he could easily be an offensive guard or a right tackle. He's got a big frame, big wingspan. All that could easily work. Nathan Mosier, a tight end from Blanchard, is visiting again. He's probably a preferred walk-on. Again, 2025. He's 6'2", 220. His film's okay. But he's visiting again. The bigger names are 2026. By the way, I wouldn't shock me if Cash Jacobson did not receive an OU offer. And if they do offer him, I think a commitment could be coming fairly quickly. There's a lot of upside here. Again, if you were telling me he's the Kamori Moore replacement, Jacobson has a lot more ceiling than Moore and a lot more positional flexibility. I mean, Moore was a nose guard on defense, and that was it. Like I said, Jacobson, he could be a 3-tech, maybe if he gets a little quicker. Like I said, I just don't. With Trenton Wilson and some of the other guys OU's recruiting in 26, he doesn't have the burst like David Stone or Trenton Wilson or Carrington or Gerald's, the two guys who just visited from 2026 class. So that's where I think Jacobson is. He could be a big nose guard, run stuffer, hard to move. He's athletic for his size. There's a lot of upside here. And like I said, I think he could also easily move to the offensive side of the ball if OU recruited over some reason somehow in OU, if they 2026 guys, if they recruit over it, like they bring in a couple of big super athletic nose guards. I think there's another spot he could easily move to offense, red shirt and make that move and be very productive. The other two guys that are interesting are offensive tackles, and they're true offensive tackles. Now, for 2026, OU's got a really good group of interior prospects. Noah Best, Toa Katoa, Pulailite Primus, Maxwell Robinson, Drew Evers, maybe, depending upon where you think he is. So they've had a lot of interior guys come in, good-looking interior guys. But true tackles, it's Felix Ojo is the primary left tackle that they're recruiting. And they've got some other guys they've been looking at. Cortavius Tisby from South Oak is a big tackle. He's kind of underrated right now. So they've got some other guys coming in. Aaron Thomas from Arizona, from the Chandler area. He's 6'6", 270. He's very lean, very athletic. Looks like he could easily be a left tackle. Big frame, and like I said, he's a lean-looking 270, 280, and just excellent feet, excellent athlete. And then from Virginia, and Aaron Thomas is like a 3-star right now. I think he probably has a real high ceiling. But from Virginia, Carter Scruggs is visiting. He's a top 150 tackle in the country, and he's 6'6", 290, and he's a physical machine. He plays left tackle in high school. Might be he's at the minimum, he's a right tackle. And he's a physical, punishing, big right tackle, good in pass pro, but just physical road grader at right tackle. If you had Primus or Afalava, Eddie Pierre-Louis, or Toa Katoa, some of the guys OU's recruiting next to him, you'd have a physical, smashing right side of your offensive line. So he's a guy definitely to watch. Both these guys obviously coming out on their own dime. So really interesting. Nice to add 2 additional tackles into the tackle mix. So that very happy to see both of those guys visiting. The big name, though, is that he's a 2026 player. He's from California. His name is Talanoa Ili. It's I-L-I. He's from, like I said, he's from California, 6'3", 215, top 30 in the country. I've watched his film, his sophomore film. Haven't really found any junior year film to look at, not in a condensed format. And he looks fantastic. He's all physical, sudden burst, explosive. I think there's a reason he's the top-rated linebacker to visit in the Zach Haley era of linebacker recruiting. OU has had a couple other 2026 linebackers visit it recently in September that were really good prospects, but Ely looks like maybe the best, and it's a great sign for OU to get him on campus this early. Hoping OU can make a run at him. Again, he would just be when you need to reload the linebacker room in 2026, because it doesn't look like 2025, OU's going to really have a lot of linebackers. And 2026, that means OU needs to sign at least 3 to have those guys ready to take over when the big class of McCullough, Kip Lewis, Omasigo, and Kobe McKenzie leave. You need Brent's system isn't something where you plug in freshman linebackers. So we need guys in 2026 to be trained up by those veterans in 2026 and then ready to hit the field in like 2027. So Illy, big visit. Hopefully it all goes through well. It's not a marquee game, so it's a little surprising to see him there. But hopefully he'll show up. Then we got 126 name, 127 name, interesting guys from Valiant, Oklahoma. And I'm going to have to look up real quick. I know I don't know where Valiant, Oklahoma is. So let me check here. What part of the state Valiant is in. All right, Valiant, Oklahoma. All right, it is. It seems to be near basically east and south of Norman, near Ada. Is that right? Let me check that again. Nope, that's not right. Mess that up. Search for something. Search for the wrong thing. All right. Valiant's right on the border of Oklahoma. All right. Somebody in comments tell me if I have that wrong. It looks like it is near Broken Bow and Hugo. So it's in South Oklahoma. Almost in Texas, almost in Arkansas. So it is if I have that right, I can't remember the last time OU signed a player from that part of that region of Oklahoma. So that's interesting. So they've got two kids there. One's an athlete running back by the name of Kenny Golston, who's 6'1", 215, already picking up a bunch of offers, Power 5 offers. Looks like he's going to be a big-time prospect. I believe he works out at Sean Cooper's facility. I think he should be on campus along with his 2027 teammate, King Golston, who's a defensive end, defensive tackle. He's listed right now as 6'2", 230. I suspect he's bigger than that. It would be interesting if he's a recruitable 2027 guy, because that would give you along with Joseph Graves, if you could have multiple Power 4 D-line off recruitable players in the same class. That would be big for OU. So another interesting player. And then a name I've not heard of before, but he's on Twitter saying he's coming to the game. He's Marquise Evans. He's a 2027 DB from Moore, Oklahoma, 6 foot 170. And named a track. I don't really have too many details on him. And then 2028, we have a running back from Forney, Texas, Sidney Hubbard, who's like 5'11", 185. Like I said, he's just his freshman year. He's obviously a freshman in high school right now. So it'll be interesting to see what his footage looks like once it's this year's footage looks like. Can't really do a whole lot with junior high footage. But yeah, it's an interesting small group of players. The interesting 4 names to really track to kind of repeat are Cash Jacobson from Jenks. If he gets an offer, I think we could see a commitment for OU, and he would be an interesting defensive line addition piece. Red shirt, add depth, big upside. And then the 3 2026 guys, Aaron Thomas from Arizona, offensive tackle, Carter Scruggs from Virginia, and then Talanoa Ili, big-time linebacker from California. So for a game that doesn't have a lot of hype or buzz to it, for OU to get 3 big-time legit targets for 2026 on campus for the weekend it's not bad. I think OU's trying to basically shoot the rest of their recruiting energy for 2026 unofficial visitors for the Alabama game in 2 weeks. Sorry, 3 weeks, because we have Missouri, then a bye week, then Bama. In 3 weeks, that will be a much bigger list. Also, hopefully, OU can get some offers and sort of strike quickly with some kids, make some offers, get them on time, get them into the town for the Alabama game, and then try and sign them on December 4th for the 2025 class. Maybe we'll see some more traffic there, because, like I said, the class needs more players to finish out what OU has. So that's all I've got for you guys today. Thanks for listening. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast, and don't forget to leave a rating. Also, just a reminder again, please visit the Patreon site, patreon.com/Sooners360817 to subscribe. Putting up more content there, some program content. That Patreon site directly supports this podcast, keeps this podcast free, keeps it available to everyone. So please give the Patreon site a try. And everyone on YouTube, I appreciate you guys, our YouTube followers as well. Please like and subscribe to the 360 channel. Thanks, everyone.